When people hear the name Adam Smith, they often imagine an economist. A man buried in numbers, graphs, and theories about markets. But Smith was never just an economist, he was a moral philosopher. He didn't sit in a bank counting coins. He sat in silence, thinking about what it means to be human, about our desires, our relationships, our greed, our compassion. And from that reflection, he built one of the most influential ideas in all of history, the foundation of capitalism. To understand Adam Smith is to understand more than economics. It's to understand how we became the modern world, how we went from feudal lords and kings to free individuals who could build, create, trade, and dream. It's to understand how morality, self-interest, and freedom intertwine to shape the system that governs our lives today. But it's also to understand the deep paradox that lies within that system, a paradox Smith himself saw, yet one that many of his followers have forgotten. Adam Smith was born in 1723 in Kirkcaldy, Scotland, a quiet coastal town far from the bustling trade centres of Europe. His father died before he was born, leaving his mother to raise him alone. Smith was a sickly, introspective boy, more comfortable with books than with people. His brilliance emerged early. He entered the University of Glasgow at just 14 and studied moral philosophy under Francis Hutcheson, a thinker who believed that humans had an innate moral sense, a kind of natural compass guiding them toward virtue. This early influence shaped Smith deeply. He came to believe that human beings were not cold calculators but moral creatures capable of empathy, fairness, and self-reflection. Yet Smith was also fascinated by the world of trade, craftsmanship, an exchange that was transforming Scotland in the 18th century. He lived during the Scottish Enlightenment, a time when reason, science, and philosophy were reshaping the Western world. The streets of Edinburgh were filled with thinkers, David Hume, James Watt, and others, all exploring how humans progress, not by divine command, but by understanding natural laws. Smith joined this intellectual revolution. He wanted to uncover not only how societies worked but why they worked. His first major work, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, 1759, wasn't about money or markets at all. It was about human nature. In it, Smith argued that the foundation of society is not greed, but sympathy, the ability to imagine ourselves in someone else's situation. He wrote that we are not entirely selfish, we desire not only our own happiness but the approval of others. We care about how we're seen. We want to be worthy of admiration. This, Smith thought, was what held society together, not fear of punishment or pursuit of wealth, but our shared human conscience. This insight is crucial, because later, when Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, the book that would earn him the title Father of Capitalism, he never abandoned this moral vision. He didn't believe that markets worked because people were greedy, he believed they worked because people, while pursuing their own goals, are connected through a web of sympathy, fairness, and trust. Capitalism, for Smith, wasn't just an economic system, it was a moral system, rooted in the complex psychology of human beings. In The Wealth of Nations, 1776, Smith observed something extraordinary about human behavior. He noticed that when a baker, a brewer, or a butcher provides goods for others, they don't do it out of kindness. They do it out of self-interest, because they want to earn a living. Yet this self-interest, when guided by rules and competition, leads to a social benefit: everyone gets fed. The butcher wants profit, but to get it, he must provide good meat at a fair price. The invisible hand of the market ensures that individual ambition can create collective prosperity. This idea, the invisible hand, became one of the most famous metaphors in all of philosophy. It suggested that we don't need a king or a central planner to organize society. If individuals are free to pursue their own goals, the system will naturally coordinate itself. Prices, supply, and demand all balance through human interaction. It was a revolutionary thought, almost spiritual in its simplicity. Before Smith, most wealth came from land, privilege, and conquest. Monarchs controlled trade. Guilds restricted entry. Power was inherited, not earned. But Smith's vision shattered that order. He argued that wealth should not come from hoarding gold or conquering colonies, but from production, from the labor, skill, and creativity of ordinary people. In his view, every person, regardless of birth, could contribute to the nation's prosperity through their work. This was the moral revolution at the heart of capitalism. It democratized ambition. It turned the pursuit of self-betterment into a virtue. No longer did one need a royal title to make a mark on the world. The blacksmith, the merchant, the farmer, all became part of a vast, self-organizing system that rewarded effort and innovation. Smith's ideas helped lay the groundwork for modern democracy and free enterprise. But Smith's capitalism wasn't the cold, ruthless system many imagine today. He believed markets only function when built on trust, honesty, and justice. Society, he wrote, cannot subsist among those who are at all times ready to hurt and injure one another. He knew that markets alone couldn't sustain civilization, they needed moral foundations. Without virtue, self-interest could turn into exploitation. Without empathy, profit could become predation. He warned that businessmen, if left unchecked, would conspire to raise prices and limit competition. He distrusted monopolies, corruption, and political capture. Smith never worshipped the market as a god. He saw it as a tool, powerful, but dangerous in the wrong hands. For him, the real goal of economics wasn't wealth itself, but human flourishing, the ability of people to live meaningful, dignified lives. And yet, in the centuries after Smith's death, his message was twisted. Industrialists and politicians took only half of his philosophy, the part about self-interest and the invisible hand, and forgot the other half about sympathy, virtue, and justice. They turned a moral philosophy into an ideology. The result was a world where the market became the master, not the servant, of humanity. But if Smith were alive today, what would he say? Would he recognize the capitalism he helped inspire? He'd probably marvel at the abundance, innovation, and freedom his ideas unleashed, billions lifted out of poverty, technologies transforming life itself. But he'd also be disturbed by the extremes of inequality, by the commodification of everything, by the erosion of moral sentiment in pursuit of endless growth. Because Smith understood something we've largely forgotten, capitalism, without conscience, devours itself. When self-interest becomes selfishness, when profit outweighs compassion, the invisible hand turns into a clenched fist. The system stops serving humanity and begins consuming it. Yet Smith wasn't a pessimist. He believed in the power of education, community, and moral development. He thought that while people are driven by self-interest, they are also capable of reflection, of recognizing that long-term happiness comes not from greed, but from balance. In the theory of moral sentiments, he wrote that happiness doesn't come from wealth or power, but from tranquility, from self-respect, from harmony between our desires and our duties. That's not the language of an economist, it's the wisdom of a sage. Smith saw that a good society must cultivate character, not just commerce. The market, he thought, should be embedded within moral life, guided by laws, empathy, and a sense of justice. It should reward not only success but virtue. The great danger, he warned, was admiration for the rich and contempt for the poor. the disposition to admire, and almost to worship, the rich and the powerful, he wrote, and to neglect persons of poor and mean condition is the great and most universal cause of the corruption of our moral sentiments. That one line captures a truth that resonates powerfully in our time. In a world of influencers, billionaires, and digital idols, we continue to confuse wealth with worth. We admire success more than integrity. We chase luxury while neglecting virtue. Adam Smith saw this danger coming centuries ago. He knew that when admiration for the rich replaces moral judgment, society loses its compass. So what did Smith ultimately teach us? That capitalism isn't a license for greed, but a test of virtue. It's not just about markets, it's about moral maturity. The invisible hand only works when guided by an invisible heart. He believed in human freedom, but also in human responsibility. He saw that prosperity without ethics leads not to happiness, but to emptiness. Smith's life itself reflected this humility. Despite his fame, he lived modestly. When he died in 1790, he had destroyed most of his unpublished writings. He didn't want unfinished thoughts to mislead others. He asked for no grand monument, no marble statue. Only a simple inscription on his grave. For a man who reshaped the world, he left quietly, like a philosopher should, content that his ideas would speak louder than his name. Today, as we face the crises of inequality, consumerism, and ecological collapse, Adam Smith's true message matters more than ever. Because he reminds us that capitalism was never meant to be soulless. It was meant to be humane, a system where freedom and virtue could coexist, where personal ambition could serve the public good. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of our age is that we took Smith's market but forgot his morality. We built systems that measure profit but ignore purpose. We became efficient but not ethical, rich but restless. But if we return to Smith, not the economist, but the philosopher, we can rediscover the balance that made his vision revolutionary. Imagine a world where business is guided not only by the bottom line but by empathy, where innovation serves humanity, not just shareholders, where economic growth is measured by well-being, not just wealth. That's not utopian, it's Smith's original dream. He believed that prosperity and morality could reinforce each other, that a just economy is built on trust, and that human progress depends not on greed, but on wisdom. Adam Smith's real genius was that he saw humanity whole. He understood that we are both self-interested and moral, competitive yet compassionate. He didn't divide the world between saints and merchants, he saw that both could live in the same person. He built a bridge between economics and ethics, between the heart and the mind. And that bridge is what we need to cross again today. So when you hear capitalism, don't think only of banks, stocks, or markets. Think of human beings or of bakers, builders, creators, and dreamers, each contributing their part to a larger whole. Think of Smith's invisible hand not as a force of greed, but as a symbol of cooperation through freedom. Think of the moral philosopher who believed that wealth without virtue is hollow, and that true prosperity lies not in accumulation, but in connection. In the end, Adam Smith didn't give us an economic manual, he gave us a moral map. A way to navigate the complex terrain between self-interest and social good. His philosophy reminds us that capitalism, at its best, is not a system of exploitation but of empowerment. It's a reflection of our potential to align personal gain with collective benefit, to turn self-love into social harmony. And that is the forgotten wisdom of Adam Smith, the moral philosopher behind capitalism. A thinker who believed that the wealth of nations begins in the wealth of character. That the market's strength lies not only in its freedom, but in its conscience. and that the true measure of progress is not how much we can earn, but how well we can live together with justice, empathy, and virtue.